Hi Suspects, this is my book review, and I read Show of Hands by Andrew McCarten, and it was surprisingly good. The premise of the book is that a struggling car dealership needs to strum up business, so they have a publicity stunt in which contestants must keep one hand on a car at all times, and the last person standing with their hand on the car will then drive away with the new Land Rover. And so that's kind of the premise of the story. And it's not an adventure book, obviously. I mean, they're not crossing the Andes with one hand on a car, even though that would be quite cool. So, one of you write that. Um, but you meet essentially three characters. There's Matt, who you first think, oh yeah, he's a good guy, yeah, Matt. And then there's Jess, who is kind of passive, but she's a good person because she's trying to win this car for her daughter, who's in a wheelchair, and the car would be big enough to transport her daughter. And then you meet Tom, who you just hate instantly because he's just such an asshole. Like he's like, I'm a Mensa member, and he thinks he's better than everyone else, and he's rude, and he's mean, and he's aggressive, and you just want to like go into the book with a gun and try to like kill him because he's just a jerk. But as the plot progresses, you kind of see society kind of around the car just fall apart. Sort of like in Lord of the Flies, but in Lord of the Flies they had a whole island. In Show of Hands, they're just becoming them true selves in the vicinity of a Land Rover. So that's really interesting. And you kind of learn that people aren't what you first see, because Jess, she becomes less passive. She eventually just yells at Tom, which he needed. And Matt, you find out that he really is not a good person at all. He was cheating in this whole competition. And Tom, I think, is the most surprising because you first write him off as like this asshole, and you think he's the one that would cheat and be immoral. But the saving grace for Tom is that he's a moral person. He's at the core a good person. So maybe he isn't likable on the surface, but he still has values, and he tries to, do the right thing. And I thought the last kind of section of the book was really touching, where Andrew McCarten writes, instead, they silently admitted to a world that was as it was, that finally had to be taken on its own terms. Born into it, you had no choice but to rise to the daily challenges as they arose. To be capable, one called upon of feats, usually ordinary feats, but every now and again extraordinary ones also, such as keeping your hand on a car without sleep for 5 days and 11 hours and 22 minutes, or holding your breath for 8 minutes and 58 seconds, or else eating 53 and a half hot dogs in 12 minutes, or memorizing pi to a fantastic number of decimal places, living for 122 years and 164 days, and learning to love despite the pain. Yes, all of the above were tough, but as a record books now showed, not impossible. So I thought that kind of really summed up the novel, and I thought that was really a sweet ending. So, show of hands, go, get it at your library. It's not amazing, the best book you ever read, but it was good and it was rather enjoyable. So, bye, suspects.